In my last video, we covered 15 mods that are essential to my Space Engineers experience. Today, continuing my month of mods, we'll be looking at 15 of my favourite mods for the game that I believe everyone should try. Let's begin! In order to show off the first few mods, we're going to need a planet, and unfortunately, there isn't one nearby, so I'll need to build one myself. Console Spawn Planets is a mod that adds a command to spawn in planets. Whilst you can spawn in planets from the base game cheat menu, you don't get as many options as you do using this mod. For starters, in the base game, planets are limited to being a minimum size of 90 kilometers. However, with this mod, you can spawn in very small planets. Here, for example, you can see a 1 kilometer mini-Mars, which you might recognise from my Destroying a Planet videos. It's too early in the video to ask them to like and subscribe, shut up. You can also go much smaller than this. Here is an Earth-like planet that is 5 meters in diameter. And just look at this cute little guy. Isn't he adorable? Around the world, around the world. Look! I destroyed a planet again. Obviously, you can make bigger planets as well. On the right is the regular max-size Earth-like planet, and on the left is an even larger one that I spawned in using this mod. And I can also spawn in a planet the size of our real-life planet. Well, it turns out I can't spawn in a planet the size of our real-life planet. You can also use this mod to define the exact locations of planets. So if you wanted to create a custom star system and map out the exact coordinates of them in a spreadsheet, not that I would ever do that, now you can. And now that we have our planet, it's time to make our way towards its surface. Is that supposed to happen? Aerodynamic physics is a mod that adds, well, aerodynamic physics to Space Engineers. It encourages you to build ships that are more aerodynamic, as otherwise the wind resistance will make them, shall we say, difficult to fly. The advantage to this is you can reduce the amount of thrusters you need on your ships if you make them aerodynamic enough to glide. You know, like how planes work. Because last I checked, planes don't have a set of thrusters along the bottom of them to keep them up. I did a whole video with some friends where we covered this mod in depth. We built some planes, tested how well they flew, and then obviously dogfighted with them. Which, if you're interested, you can check out on the card on the top right. Building planes is actually a nice change of pace for Space Engineers, but you can change the settings of the mod if it does disrupt your building of normal ships too much. This mod also adds re-entry mechanics as well. If you're travelling too fast in an atmosphere, and you have to really push it to make this happen, your ship will start to burn up and take damage, which is very cinematic and quite the sight. But it's not as much as a sight as these bad boys. Tank tracks over vanilla wheels is mostly a cosmetic mod, but counterpoint, tank tracks are very cool. All you need to do to use it is get any rover, grab the tank builder from the menu, go to your rover with it equipped, select all of your wheels, and bam, a tank tread is dynamically created. These tank treads move with your wheels as you drive your rover, and they also stop the animation of the wheels turning. As you can see here, the rover is turning right, and the wheels aren't turning right with it. Because last I checked, tank treads don't turn when the tank wants to turn around. They also work for large grids as well, in the same manner, and you can have multiple per grid. As you can see, I'm placing a set of tracks on each of the sets of wheels on this large rover. And if I start driving this large rover, you can see each of the tank treads turns independently. Not gonna lie, this thing looks 100 times better with tank treads. This mod uses the Tank Tracks framework and API, and there are other mods that take advantage of it as well. So, if you don't like the treads offered in Tank Tracks over vanilla wheels, you can use this mod instead. Tank Track Pack Maru, which is very easy to say, adds additional tank treads based on real life tanks. I'm not a big tank guy, but I know some of you guys are, so I'll show a couple of examples for you guys to get the idea. One thing I should mention is that these treads don't have to be a set shape, so if you have another wheel up here like this, you can still place a tank tread around all of them and it will still dynamically create the tread. I wish I had some better rovers to demo these tank tracks with, but the only ones I have are the ones I built for my Robot Wars / BattleBots event that I'm going to host. If you've not seen either of the shows, I'm going to get a bunch of players together and battle it out using these robots, until one player comes out as the victor. I'll tell you what, when we do this event in the future, I'll include the Tank Treads mod, and join my Discord with the link in the description below if you're interested in joining in. Now that we've conquered the air and the land in Space Engineers, I guess it's time for us to escape to the one place not corrupted by capitalism. The ocean. Whilst I'm personally not too fussed about the existence of water in Space Engineers, there is water in the fish tank after all, I cannot deny that the water mod is pretty cool. Go to any planet, run a little command, and voila, you have water. It's not quite the water that Keen are working on at the moment for their new engine, but it's still very impressive. Now, I don't have any boats to hand, so Apollo, get in there. As you can see, the back of Apollo will begin to sink under the water, but the front half, due to it having an air bubble in it, will stay above the water, just like how buoyancy works in real life. Like with the Aerodynamic Physics mod, this gives you a new way to build, allowing you to build ships that can sail across the 7 seas. The water mod is very configurable. You can change the height of the water, its properties like how well things float and the wave height and speed, and you can also change the texture of the water. So, to the one guy that asked for it last video, beans. Now that we're living our new pirate life, sailing across the 7 beans, let's take a look at some mods that improve our piratey scavenging gameplay. AwwScrap, which will never be pronounced a different way, is the mod that changes how you play the game. It, alongside some other mods, like scarce resources and other various NPC mods, encourage a scavenging gameplay loop. With AwwScrap, grinding down a block now gives scrap material instead of its raw components, and this scrap only gives you 45% of the raw resources back when you refine it. The idea is, rather than grinding down blocks you find, you instead take that full block and then attach it to a ship, using a mod like Advanced Welding covered in my Essential Mods video. I've done a full video that includes a list of mods that encourage this kind of gameplay, so check it out if you're interested. However, there's one more mod from that video that I also wanted to cover in this one, because it does something I've always wanted for the game. In the base game, if you want to move a block, you have to grab it with your ship, hope you pick the block up at a good angle, slowly move it to where you need it, and then struggle to place it where you want, all whilst not breaking your ship, the block, or your base on the way. Look, this block is so small, can't I just pick it up with my hands and move it? Oh. Improvised Engineering allows you to pick up blocks with your hands, so now you can carry those pesky little blocks around with you and place them exactly where you need. You can even use it to move your smaller ships, like the Zeropod here. Is your ship too far for you to get into its cockpit? Drag its ass over to you. It also has other uses as well. If you combine a spotlight with a battery, you now have a makeshift torch that you can carry around with you. And you can also pick up blocks and throw them. Here, Striker, catch! What are you worried about? I wouldn't throw a live warhead at you. There's just something so tactile about being able to pick up blocks with my hands, and we can add to that feeling using the next mod. I love buttons. I place them absolutely everywhere I can to do things like opening hangar doors, pressurizing airlocks, enable emergency red alerts, etc, etc. But let's be honest, buttons are kind of lame, aren't they? Even the DLC buttons aren't much better. Sure, you can put words on them as the buttons are LCDs, but that's about it. Luckily, there is this awesome mod that both fixes that and adds a super cool function to the game. Button Pad Touch App changes all LCDs in Space Engineers into touchscreens that you can use in the same way as buttons. And when I say all LCDs, I mean all LCDs. This LCD above the button counts. As you can see, I've turned it into a little touchscreen, and so do the LCDs on console blocks, making them actually useful as consoles rather than just decoration. If we place an LCD in front of this light here, open up the LCD's terminal, change the content type to script, and then set the type as button pad, that's 90% of the work done. Now, as you can see, if I move my head around, a little cursor moves around with me. I can reduce the number of buttons on screen as I don't need this many for what I'm doing, and then if I select this button on the right, it prompts up a list of blocks on my grid. I select my light, select toggle on and off, and then for now select show current value. And you can see I have the icon for a light and the word on. And if I look at the button and select it, it toggles the light off, and if I click it again, it turns it back on. I can change what it says underneath the icon, so the first option is the name of the block, which is like. The next option is the name and the state, so like is the name and its state is on, the function it's performing, so on and off, or just remove the text altogether, just leaving the icon. I think I want to leave it on its name and its state, so I can see exactly what block I'm looking at and the state it's in. And maybe perhaps because then I can make a joke about clicking this like button, which you should definitely do if you found this video helpful so far. Oh, and what's this? There's a second button. I guess you should click this button as well if you want to see more videos about mods and space engineers. AQD, or a Quantum of Depth, is a collection of mods that are all very useful in their own right, but I wanted to highlight 2 of them in this video. I always go back and forth on whether or not some blocks should be large grid only, but if I do want small grid versions of certain blocks, I always use AQD Small Grid Expansion. This mod adds small grid versions of several blocks, with the main ones being the Basic Assembler, Basic Refinery, Gravity Generator, and Jump Drive. The standout ones for me are the Basic Assembler and Basic Refinery, as I kinda think they should be available on small grid, considering how important small grids are to early game space engineers. It's nice to have a small grid gravity generator for your larger small grid ships, and it also enables you to build small grid gravity drives, which is always a bonus. And whilst I'll happily tell you how much I don't like the jump drive, a small grid version is definitely a welcome addition. Whilst larger, more powerful versions of blocks might be coming in an update in the future as part of Prototech, but now we have the next best thing. However, AQD Upgradeable Gyroscopes' best feature, in my opinion, isn't actually the new blocks adds. One of its features replaces the base game gyroscopes model so it spins as you rotate your ship, which might not seem like much, but it always puts a massive smile on my face whenever I see it. I don't know what it is, I just love seeing little dynamic elements like this. AQD Upgradeable Gyroscopes adds 3 new blocks. The Gyro Booster functions in a very similar way to an upgrade module, increasing the power of gyroscopes attached to it. Here you can see Apollo turning with just 4 gyroscopes, and as you can see, it's very, very slow. If I remove my 4 gyroscopes and place down a gyro booster with 4 gyros on it, you should immediately notice how much faster we're able to turn. This should be roughly twice as fast as before. Let's remove our gyros and gyro booster again, so that now we can place down the next new block, the large gyroscope. The large gyro is equivalent to 30 gyroscopes, so if we do a spin now, we should turn very fast. But don't worry, if that wasn't fast enough for you, there's also upgrade modules for the large gyroscopes, and placing 4 of them should increase the power of the large gyroscope to around that of 80 gyroscopes. So if we spin once more for good luck, well, that was very fast, wasn't it? Obviously, these are meant for larger ships, and not a tiny rocket like this, but they will definitely save you from placing hundreds of gyroscopes on your large grid ships. And, speaking of reducing the amount of blocks you need to place, the Overclocking control system mod is very similar to adjustable thruster multipliers, which we covered in my Essential Mods video, except for 2 key differences. This mod adds a new block named after the mod called the Overclocking control system, which allows you to overclock blocks on your grid. If I open up the terminal for the overclocking system, you can see that I have the option to overclock reactors by up to 10 times, which will improve the power output at the cost of the reactors using more uranium. The gas generator option is for the O2H2 generator, which has always been considered slow by the community. It's also the same for the gyroscope and thruster options, which should also affect modded ones, like the AQD gyroscopes we looked at earlier. The overclocking system is more balanced than other options, as you still need more power or hydrogen to overclock your blocks. You just instead save space, as you need 10 times less the number of blocks. And, as the overclocking system is a block, it can also be destroyed, which will thus remove the overclocking of your blocks. Ellie Dang's Holo HUD is a fairly new mod, but it looks absolutely amazing. If we hop into Apollo's cockpit, you can see this beautiful cockpit interface come to life. There's a bunch of information on this interface. At the bottom we have the amount of power and hydrogen remaining. You can see that I'm able to thrust forward for just over an hour with the hydrogen stored on the ship. Over here you can see my speed, and then on the other side you can see my overall energy usage. On the right you can see a holographic diagram of my ship, with the blue rings around it telling me how much jump charge I have, and the number below is the overall block integrity of this ship. You can see some blocks are highlighted on the hologram. This is because there's actually unwelded blocks inside of Apollo as it was built in survival, so it's highlighting these as they're low integrity, and as far as the mod is concerned it thinks they're damaged. If I spawn in a second ship and then lock onto it, you can see that it generates a hologram on the left as well, showing the same kind of information about their ship as it does about mine. There's so many other features that this interface has, It has a radar for ships and planets at the bottom, it shows you how long it'll take for you to reach your locked target, and so much more. And all of it is highly configurable. You can turn off features you don't need or like, and if you'd rather the interface was this horrid green and magenta colour, go for it. Recolorable Thrusters is a must-have mod. It adds the option to change the colours of thruster flames to whatever you want. You can make hydrogen thruster flames blue, ion thruster flames red, or even have two separate thruster colours and then have them blend together like this. This is a blend of red and yellow, which looks very good in my opinion. Being able to change thruster colours adds so much more personality to your builds and is definitely worth checking out. As the world's #1 jump drive hater, I'm very happy to tell you about the next mod, Elite Dangerous FSD Supercruise. It adds a new block called the Frameshift drive for both small and large grid. I've replaced one of Apollo's jump drives with a Frameshift drive and its other jump drive for a reactor, for reasons you'll see later. If I get into my cockpit and then activate my Frameshift drive, you'll see that these particles appear as it begins to charge up. And once it's finished, you'll see at the bottom that we're moving at 1 km a second at a power cost of 22 megawatts. If I start thrusting forward, you'll see that both my speed and power usage increase, and you can probably see the planets getting closer a lot faster, until eventually I stop speeding up when I reach around 32 to 33 km a second. This is because the Supercruise drive uses up to the maximum power generation of my ship, and if we look in the bottom right, my power usage is around 99%, thus I can't go any faster without more power. So, if I hypothetically overclocked my reactor a couple of times, I can get up to a max speed of 50 km per second, at just below a gigawatt of power. Bearing in mind that I'm in creative, and I don't actually need to use uranium to fuel the reactor, and that the energy cost of the Supercruise drive is based on the size of the ship. So as Apollo is a smaller ship, it doesn't need that much energy to power it. But a larger ship would require a lot more power to move at these speeds. The Frameshift drive drops you out of warp if you're about to hit a base, asteroid or planet, and it can also be configured to have a higher max speed than it already does. And you can also configure it to have an overheating option as well, presumably to balance the mod, or destroy people's fun. One of the two. And I guess if we're adding things like warp to Space Engineers, we better look at adding some other sci-fi staples as well. Ah, she's beautiful, isn't she? Oh, sorry Minimars, I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about my ship. What ship? Oh, sorry, you can't see it, can you? My bad. Let me decloak. I think that this might be the coolest mod in Space Engineers. The Stealth Drive mod adds 2 new blocks to the game. The first is the Stealth Drive, which is very self-explanatory, and the second is the Heatsink. Whilst you're in Stealth, the Stealth Drive builds up heat, and it forces you to leave Stealth when a certain amount of heat is reached. So, placing down heat sinks allows you to increase your stealth duration. If I cloak and then get out of my cockpit, you can see that I can still see inside my ship. But, if I leave my ship and then fly a little bit away, you can see that if I get a certain distance away, that my ship disappears. And then if I fly back in, it reappears again. I think it probably goes without saying, but cloaking prevents enemy weapons from targeting you. Here, I'm practically rubbing my nose up against this ship, and if I hit it, I automatically decloak, as, well, they know I'm here now, and their weapons make quick work of me. Like with FSD Supercruise, the bigger the ship, the more power is needed to cloak, but for those of you that want to live out your Romulan fantasies, here you go. No, stop it, not those ones. Ahem. And whilst we're still on the trail of mods that add sci-fi staples to the game, nearly 9 years ago, one of the first mods I remember for Space Engineers was released, called Energy Shields. It was basic, it was simple, but you know what? It got the job done and did exactly what it was supposed to do. And, much to my surprise, at the beginning of this year, a new, updated version of this mod was released. Deflector Shields adds a new block that you can place on your ships that add shields to them. They take a moment to charge up, but once they do, you are invulnerable to damage while they are active. So, if I take my rifle and fire into the ship, you can see that I get a blue flash but no damage to the armour. And if I fire this rocket launcher into my ship, you can see, once again, that it does no damage. If I grab a larger ship, I can show you exactly how the shields look under sustained fire. It actually looks pretty cool, and exactly how I'd imagine shields would look in the game. The HP of your shields are based on the available power on your grid, so the more power and power storage you have available to you, the higher the HP of your shields will be. So if I get into my cockpit, you can see the HP my shields have. Now, the only thing this mod really lacks is a nice UI widget to show the HP of your shields, as opposed just to this text down here. However, this mod is fairly new and is being actively worked on, so hopefully that's something we can see in the future. One interesting thing I found about this mod is that when I cloak, it immediately drains all my shields, which is some pretty cool cross-compatibility between these mods, as it gives you the option to choose between stealth or shields. These are just some of my favourite mods for Space Engineers, but let me know some of your favourite mods in the comments below. And don't forget, we're still doing more videos about mods this month, so like this video and subscribe to this channel to see the next one. And longer videos like this one are funded by my channel supporters on both YouTube and Patreon. Thanks to Clone, The Whiskman, Hamish Drowner, The Wildcat, Tarantula Fudge and Sommet.